We're speaking to Chung Liang this morning, more known as Liang. Good morning, Liang.
Good morning. Nobody calls me by my full name
I
except my
know,
mom,
right?
but it's a good thing.
Did it sound
Now
like you were in trouble
everybody
or
will
something?
know your name is Chung Liang.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
like
the
you're in
only
trouble
name
by
I
your
get when I'm in
mom.
trouble.
Now, Liang, we all know that you're a man of many talents. You're a singer, you host events, you were a radio announcer before, you're even a certified Le Cordon Bleu chef, and you're a new
Oh, wow.
dad.
Thank you. Like I've never heard all that like in one sentence before, and it does sound pretty good. So yeah, I
But
take what
what
I
would
can
you
get.
say, right? What would you say is the job that you are most passionate about?
Oh, life. Just like it's not a specific title, like just everything that goes along with this life. That's what I'm passionate about. So it's not specifically culinary, or it's not specifically music. It's not specifically, that there is no like particular facet that I like. It's all part of this journey called life. So that's what I'm passionate about.
You're passionate about life. I like
Oh
that.
yeah,
Now, let's rewind a little bit. I remember you releasing singles
yeah.
in the English local music scene, and
Mm-hmm.
you were relatively successful. So,
Yeah.
how did you
Once
get
upon a time.
how did you get your start in the music industry?
Okay, so what happened was like this was like maybe 20 years ago. So I actually wrote a song for a Christmas production. This was like, yeah, maybe 20 years ago, and it so happened that this lady called Juwita Surito was part of that Christmas production. So she heard the song and she's like, "Hey, who's this?" And to cut a long story short, she arranged for a meetup. She told me she has a record label. She said she'd like to sign me up. I said, okay. But she said, hang on, there's a catch. You got to come on tour with us first to see if you got, showmanship, if you can carry yourself on stage. So I said, yeah, let's go. So we went to, of all places, Sabah. We had a tour in Sabah. So we went to Tawau, we went to Miri, we went to KK. Uh, had a lot of fun, met a lot of great people, signed my first autograph band, good stuff. And so yeah, that kind of kicked off my musical journey. And then I released 3 albums, one of which was AIM nominated. So that was fun as well, being at AIM, not too shabby for a boy from Klang. Yeah, so it's been good.
But what got you started in songwriting in the first place? Like, were you always interested in music?
Yeah, I think music is something that you can't really run away from, especially for my family. Like all my siblings, we were all like into music. Some played the piano. My brother plays the guitar really well. Uh, so we all were into music, and my dad was really supportive. Like he bought us instruments, and we had like a mixer at home with microphones. So our house was like the studio house. Like you came by and you wanted to jam. You did your Nirvana covers at my place. You did your Snoop Dogg covers at my place. So that was quite cool.
Okay. But
Yeah.
what made you um, want to change your career at that point in time?
Well, I've been asked this, or it's been put forward to me before. Like, and I don't really think it's a change of career, because if you're down this path called life, it's just different chapters, just kind of open and close.
Yeah.
But so the change from the pivot from one chapter to the other was, well, I'm Hainanese, and as my ancestors would have it, being in the kitchen is just part of life. Like you go back in history and it's Hainanese chicken chop lah,
Yeah.
Hainanese chicken rice lah. So I think it was just a natural thing. Like, okay, it's in my blood. I acknowledge that. Let's open a shop. Let's open a restaurant. So yeah, that's what I did, and it was not something that was forced upon me. It just felt natural. Like I wasn't leaving something good and going into something else. It just was okay. I can do music. Okay, let's do food, kind of a thing.
But when you were at that point thinking, let's do food, could you cook at all at that particular time? Were you already cooking at home and stuff like this?
I had a few basic things, But I thought to myself, like, if I was going to open a restaurant, I got to do it proper. Like, I don't want to just be doing, uh, those 4 or 5 dishes that I do at home, the laksai, the nasi lemak, and the mi hun siam kind of a thing. So I decided to enroll in culinary school to kind of get myself like up to speed. Like, if I were to open a restaurant, I want to do it proper. I got to have, your starters, your mains, your desserts, the whole works. So yeah, that was just me preparing myself, I guess, for the next phase.
But when you went to culinary school, did you say that, okay, that's it for my musical career? Did you put
No,
an end to that, or was it, like
no,
you said, just a natural progression?
yeah. So
Just putting a pause on that.
yeah. You once a music man, always a music man. You never quite close the door on anything. So um, that part of me has stayed. Like, so at my place, I ran. We had to close shop in May because of the pandemic. But for 4.5, 5 years, I ran a place called Workbook in Subang. And every Wednesday we'd have this thing called Workbook Wednesday. So we get, different people to come and sing, and I would host, and I would join in sometimes in a song or two. So that was always uh, something I would look forward to. So I would come out of the kitchen, wash my hands, still wearing my apron, come on stage, grab the mic, and then join in. So it was that, to me, was the perfect combination. Like, 30 seconds before that, I was in the kitchen cooking for you guys. And then 30 seconds, I'm coming out and holding a mic to come and sing for you guys. So it's, to me, that was the perfect night. Just being able to sing and then being able to cook for you guys. What more can I ask for?
Now tell us about your experience at one of the top culinary schools in the world, like Cordon Bleu. I heard you were one of the oldest students there, were you not?
I was I was the oldest one in my class, possibly one of the oldest to enroll. I've heard of, like, some others who were like in their 40s and in their 50s who enroll as well. But in my class, I was the oldest. So I had people half my age, literally, like running around the kitchen with me, like being, cutting onions with me and just being comrades in the kitchen with me, who are half my age. So it was surreal. It was tough. I had a really tough chef instructor. He's from jolly old England, so he had a very strict way of doing things, which is good. Like, in hindsight, we're friends now, but in hindsight, or at that point in time, it was tough. Every morning, our classes start at 8, and I had to get up at like 6-ish to like avoid the jam. You don't want to be late for class, then you miss out on stuff. Uh, but every morning when I wake up, I would always question myself, like, what am I doing here? Because it's insane. You wake up early and then they expect perfection from you for every dish, every single time, which again, in hindsight, is great. But at that point in time, it was madness. And I was like, oh man, do I have to do this? Can I just open with what I have? And these are the questions that make you question who you are
Mm.
and why you do things. And if you've got the right answer to these things, then you're in the right place.
But what was it that you were so stressed out about? Your level wasn't good enough. The way you cut onions wasn't perfect. Not up to the mark.
It's everything. It's your hair not being in place. It's the way you chop your
You didn't have
onions.
to
It's
worry
your
about that, dude.
well, you still worry because you want to be perfect.
Right, right.
And that's the level that they expect from you. So it's your onions. It's you weight your flour wrong. Your presentation on the plate isn't right. You got streaks of sauce that you didn't mop up. So everything, like, if there was a foothold that they could get you on, they would.
Right.
So, but it was good. Like, it helped me to embrace that A, I'm not perfect, and I gotta strive to be. And B, you gotta learn to embrace, like, the fact that there will always be someone better. Because it's a competitive environment. You've got people, everybody wants to be top student. And so that was always, you're friends with everyone, but there was always like the thing,
Competition.
that underlying current beneath the whole thing.
Right.
Like, everybody want to be top,
Yeah.
and they don't mind stepping on your bald head to be top. So you got 17-year-olds who be like, trying to get an age on you. I'm like, dude, I'm twice your age. Have some respect and show me some space. But they don't care.
Yeah.
I know at the end of the day, we're all friends, but that was the reality of the whole thing.
Mm.
And it carries itself well into like the real world, because in a real kitchen, everybody's fighting to get out of being a line cook.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a line cook your whole life. You want to step up and be the sous chef, or own your own kitchen. So um, it's a fairly cutthroat world. You've seen it in reality TV shows.
Yeah.
Not too far from the truth. You've seen it in some movies. I particularly like this movie called Burnt.
Oh yeah.
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Not too far from the real thing, I feel personally.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's kind of like, so you can tell like it's a huge difference from entertainment. You
Yeah.
go up on stage and everybody like, yeah, and then here you're alone in a kitchen. You've got food dockets just waiting for you to prep it. It's harsh,
Yeah.
but it's good. It's good.
But you went to culinary school with the idea of opening your own cafe in mind.
Yeah.
So when you did open, was it all that you expected it to be? And did what you learned in culinary school helped you along the way?
What I learned in culinary school definitely helped, but in terms of expectations, let me just put it all to rest. You are never, ever fully prepared to open a restaurant, because anytime you open a restaurant, like a whole bunch of unforeseen circumstances will creep up on you. No one's really 100% prepared. No one's even 90% prepared. I think one of the main skills is to be able to roll with it. Like problems come your way, okay, now what? How do you problem solve on the fly?
Mm.
So that kind of thing. So that to me is indispensable. You cannot live without that skill.
What things crept up? Like what unexpected things crept up?
Cost, for example, you set aside X dollar amount, it never is X dollar amount. It's always X plus Y, for example.
Mm.
Budgeting, manpower. If you ask any F&B practitioner, like whether chefs or restaurant owners, like manpower is like, if not the top, one of the topmost problems that you probably face.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's difficult to hire good
it's difficult to
people
hire.
to work.
It's difficult to hire well. It's difficult to hire sometimes on time. It's difficult to hire good people. It's difficult to keep the people. It's difficult to find out what incentivizes them, because different people are incentivized by different things. Some
Yeah.
people straight up cash. Some people career path. So different things. But we try our best. Whoop Whoop has always been one of those places that I felt was always a combination of, sure, work is work, but we also have play. So we take the guys out to a waterfall outing. We take the guys out for football and futsal, and then have KFC after, kind of a thing. So it was, we try and strike a balance. So I don't know you as, hey, you, the barista. It's also you who, hey, came on the waterfall with us and you carried the water bottle for us, kind of a thing. So there's always the other facet to you, that rather than just your work person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now tell us more about Whoop Whoop. Did you come up with everything in the menu on your own?
Yeah.
I read your description of the food there. It's hearty soul food made
Uh-huh.
pretty.
Yeah. Well, over time, we decided to, well, I wouldn't say ditch. I would say maybe pivot away from the pretty side. And because I think it very much is about your demographic.
Mm.
If, for example, I had opened in, let's say, city center, and it's a different demographic, and people expect a pretty plate, yeah, then it is what it is. But in Subang Jaya, where we were, I think people were more about hearty meals. You want to come and have a good time, generous portions. So I mean, a lot of other people would be like, oh, this crowd doesn't understand me. They don't understand what I do. But my personal 1.5 cent worth opinion is like, you gotta play to where you at.
Yeah.
So if I open in Klang, for example, and I'm from Klang, so I can say this. If I open in Klang, I would maybe do do it different. Maybe not so much fancy stuff. Maybe don't try and reinvent the wheel. Just get staples out, for example. So yeah, I think that's an example of starting off with an idea and then being flexible enough to understand that things change along the way and being able to kind of move along with it.
What was your personal favorite item on the menu?
Oh, JD, you cannot ask me that. Like, so if you came up with the whole menu and everything was kind of like your baby, it's hard to pick one.
But I gotta say
Uh,
that the duck breast thing last time was
oh
really
yeah,
good.
that's three ways.
Yeah.
So we had this salted egg pasta that was made that had three versions of duck. So it was duck salted egg, it was duck meat, confit duck meat as well as duck bacon. So that was kind of like the menu item that kind of got it off the ground, and it was a hit with all the Instagrammers. So so that was featured a lot, and we could never serve enough duck for one reason or another. Like the freezer was always the fridge was always filled with duck. We were always butchering duck, and there was never enough duck, which is a good problem to have. But so that, yeah, if you remember that, that's one of my favorite dishes. That's also one of our most
Signature
popular.
dishes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember
Um,
being there and they say, dude, you gotta try this. I'm like, then I did. I'm like, best thing
I think
ever.
I think what set that apart was we took the time to make sure all the details were right.
Mm.
Because like with salted egg, a lot of people use salted egg paste. It's easy. Like open a tube, squeeze it out, you got salted egg paste. But we went through the whole process. Like we got salted duck egg. We had to boil the eggs, deshell the eggs, grab the yolk, mash it down with a whole bunch of other stuff. So it was tedious. It was time consuming, but it was worth it.
Would you say it was extremely time consuming? Anyway, let's move on.
Yes,
Extremely, yes.
exceptional.
Yeah, but would you say that you going the distance for every dish made it difficult to sort of dish it out very quickly? You get what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
It's not fast food in that
Yeah,
sense. So your
yeah,
turnover might not be as good.
yeah. I think this ties back to the manpower thing.
Mm, mm.
So you got to plan for all this. Like, okay, if you're gonna, in a sense, take the harder route, take the longer route, how many more workers do you need, or how many more hours do you need to prep that? And then you got to think about price. Like, okay, so X worker costs how much more? You got to factor it into a per dish basis. So this is not something that they teach you in culinary school. This is something you got to figure out along the way. Like, okay, so if I gotta be sustainable as a business, I gotta sell X amount of plates. Each plate, what's my margin like? So if I've got if I got an extra worker to deshell, eggs and boil eggs, and he's got that on his workload, how much more would that add to, or how much more would that take away from my margins, for
Oh,
example?
they don't teach you that in culinary school at all?
No, they
the
don't.
business side of it?
No, like, yeah, this is the business side of it, and I think a lot of it is down to, well, common sense.
Right.
You got to have some level of savvy about you to be able to handle all that, which is not something that most 17-year-olds would have. So this is just, something that you kind of, life throws at you as you maneuver through life, kind of a thing.
As you grow up.
Yeah, very much so. So I think this was the other facet that's super important. Just making sure, like, if you want to do the quality stuff, if you want to take the harder route to make sure that your stuff is good, you got to make sure it's sustainable. A lot of people are like, oh, okay, I want to do, truffle butter. And then they're not worried about cost. They're not worried about whether their demographic likes it, whether their demographic knows what truffle is, for example. So one of the main things I learned was you're not feeding chefs. You're feeding people, regular, everyday people who want to come for a good meal to celebrate their birthdays or their anniversaries or whatever. Like, so you cannot get caught up in that mindset. Oh,
The artsy stuff.
the artsy stuff. I mean, artsy stuff is good. It helps you to push the envelope. But by and large, like on a daily basis, your bread and butter are people who they're not
They just want a
bothered
good
about.
meal.
Yeah, just want to have a good meal. They're not bothered about having foie gras for starters, kind of a thing. So I had to in a sense downplay that side of things just to
Mm.
make sure that okay, this is my demographic. I'm in Subang Jaya. Sure, we can do a pop-up in Bangsar, but that's further down the line. Where I am at home base, this is my crowd. This is who I'm serving. So yeah, you gotta make adjustments to make that happen.
Yeah, know your demographics, because
Yeah,
yeah, if people want fine dining food, they would go to a fine dining restaurant, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
But unfortunately, Liang, you had to make the difficult decision to close down Workbook. This was just
Woo!
last year during the
Yeah,
pandemic.
yeah.
How did you come to that decision? Like, what was the ultimate?
The straw that
The
broke the
yeah.
camel's back.
I think if you ask me honestly, from a business point of view, so okay, my wife and I we ran Workbook, like, and among ourselves we were thinking, okay, even if a pandemic hit, and sure, business will suffer, sales will suffer. People are not going to dine in, and when they could, it was SOPs in place. One table can, one table cannot, kind of a thing. Um, but from a business point of view, we knew like, okay, if we could maybe pivot, that was the key word during the pandemic. If we could pivot, maybe do more deliveries, maybe just add in a little bit more cash injection, we would be okay. So from a business point of view, I think there was fight in us that we were willing to see it out. The straw, as you put it, JD, like the straw that eventually broke the camel's back was so we were blessed with a son on the 30th of March 2020. So he was born during the pandemic, and I got thinking to myself, like, okay, I've got a restaurant. I would still be going in to meet customers. I'll be going in to have staff meetings with my guys. I'll be in the kitchen working with these guys. I'll be meeting suppliers. So I'll be meeting a whole bunch of people. And then I would come on home and then I'd carry my son. And I would never know, because there's a substantial amount of people who's asymptomatic and everything else. I would never know what I'd be carrying back home, well, into the sanctity of my home. So that to me was the straw that broke the camel's back, because I couldn't guarantee that my family would be safe. I couldn't guarantee like I would come back home and carry my son to sleep and everything will be all right the next couple of days. So me being constantly exposed to potential health risks, I thought that was maybe a step too much. I think it's different because I was a dad at 40. So being a dad at 40 is maybe a little bit different from being a dad at, let's say, my early 30s or late 20s. So my son's a little bit more precious to me than if I had him earlier. So that to me was it. Like, okay, it's not worth the risk. Family comes first. We can always reopen something else in the future, something that's maybe a little bit more pandemic friendly, something smaller. Because if you've been to Workbook, it's huge. It's 10,000 square feet, and very much more dine-ins and events, which is not going to fly. So something smaller. So yeah, there were so many different ways that we could twist it around,
Yeah.
different permutations that we could work with. But this current permutation, like Workbook being so huge in a pandemic, was not going to fly. And with all that health risk, nah, not worth it.
It's like the ultimate sacrifice.
It was.
Sacrificing one baby for another.
It was. That's exactly the way we were thinking. Like, up until we had a son, like Workbook was our baby. We would talk about it as our baby. On our off days, we would be running errands for the baby, so to speak. So it was our life. It was very much our life, and it was hard. Like when I had to write that final Facebook post for us to post it up, it was tough. I couldn't find the right words. I didn't know what to say. I was battling within myself. Do we really want to close? All the doubts and everything. It was one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make. And even when I remember this, like even when we posted it up, like this is our goodbye, guys. It's been great. Even when we posted it up, And then this was in the middle of the night. We had all kinds of people messaging us in the middle of the night, like, what? You're mad. You're crazy. You can't do this. Uh, and I remember just for that split second, me and my wife were like, what have we done? And it made you doubt as well. Like, oh, do we want to make a U-turn? But, the basis for that decision was solid, like health risk. We are in the midst of a pandemic. You're not going to change that. So we kind of had to see that decision through. Not easy, guys. Not easy. It was mad.
But looking back now, do you have any regrets for closing down Whoop Whoop?
I would like to do the cliche thing and say no regrets, but no, that's not true. Like a lot of regrets. I mean, looking in hindsight, sure, I know it's for the greater good, like, pandemic and everything, but there's always that part of me that goes like, oh, what if we had this, or what if I had that. And every now and then I catch myself thinking the same thing, like, what if I had done this instead, or what if we had carried on and hired someone else, and then I just run it remotely. So that this was some of the ideas, but I thought, Whoop Whoop has always been one of those places where I was always there. Like, if you come by for a meal at 3 p.m., I was there. So we set out not being one of those places where the owners were never present. Like, you'd come in and you knew I was there. We'd catch up, we'd have a laugh, and I'd go back in the kitchen and do stuff. So it was set out that way. So for me, the idea of having someone else run it and I was, kind of managing it remotely didn't sit so well with me, because it kind of went against the grain of why we set up this whole thing in the first place. Sure, some people say, oh, it's the pandemic, you can pivot, but there are certain fibers of this entity that you don't mess around with, and this was one of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How did your staff take it though? I mean, how did you tell them?
Oh, because we were very close. A lot of them have been with me for years. Like, we had one of the lowest turnover rates. So I had guys in the kitchen who were with me since the very beginning. We had baristas who were with us like years. So it was tough. I had to like call them one by one because I wanted to. So my wife and I, we did video call with all of them, and we said, okay, guys, this is it. Like, we cannot carry on. And it was tough. Like, they understood, but you knew like they were sad. I mean, we were sad as well. So it was one of those phone calls that you never wish that you had to make as a business owner, but you have to. So it was tough all around. Like, we video call every single one of them, like the kitchen guys, the part-timers, the full-timers, the baristas. We had an events team as well, so we had to tell them as well. So everybody got a personal explanation as to why we made this decision, which I felt was the only way to go about it, rather than, for example, send out a mass email or send out a mass text. Okay, guys, thank you all, bye, kind of a thing. So that was, to me, the only, well, they deserve that much, put it that way. Yeah.
But if you think about it, a lot of people who have had their businesses failed in a way feel like they have failed themselves. Did you feel that way? And if you did, like, how did you pull yourself back up again?
I think society has structured, our goals and ambitions as such. Like, if your business sustains, you win. If your shop closes, you lose, kind of a thing. So to me, that's not always the be all and end all of it. Like, there's so many other layers as to why a business opens or why a business closes. Every now and then, I still catch myself thinking about, thinking about if I should have carried on, because, being typical Asian, like, make my family proud. Oh, I still have a shop in the midst of a pandemic. So yeah, I do catch myself wondering about if I should carry on or and stuff like that. But sorry, I'm losing track. What was your question again, Bel?
Do you feel like you have failed? And
Oh,
how
okay.
did you, if you did, like, how did you come back up?
Okay.
How did you pick yourself back up?
So yeah, I do feel sometimes I catch myself thinking like that I have failed, but the main thing, what picks me back up is A, I've still got life. B, I've still got ambition and drive. Like I still want to do something. I'm not, I have not walked the path into retirement. So I'm not like, oh, okay, it's a pandemic. It's okay. Everybody loses. No one's able to start anything right now. Like, oh, okay, I'll just watch Netflix and chill, kind of a thing. So there is still a side of me, there is still a big side of me that really wants to kick off something else, something um, in F&B. I think it's just a case of when. So I've been planning for it. I've been planning for it. I've been working on it. It's a little harder to tie loose ends now, but you know, very much on a daily basis, I'm working on stuff to try and get stuff going. I also have a cooking show that I'm working with two different agencies. I've signed an NDA that I can't really speak about that a lot, but so there is a cooking show in place that's in the works, and I'm working with two different agencies to kind of get it out. But I think that helps me to understand like this is my path, and I cannot just let it go. So yeah, there are some parts of me that maybe society would deem a failure, but on a personal basis, the way I look at it, and with the cards that are stacked in front of me, I've got a lot to live for. So I think being in this position is also, well, you got to make things happen to be in this position, but it also helps me, be positive and take the next step forward as well. Yeah,
Mm. But you
I
have
hope
a
that answers your question.
family. We have a
Say again.
family to feed now.
Yes,
Aren't
I
you
do.
worried of making ends meet, especially for your small baby?
Always. I think with every breadwinner, that's always in the back of your mind. You wanna, you don't just want to provide. You want to provide the best. Whether it's food, or whether it's education, or dressing him up in Air Jordans as a kid, for example. I mean, you want to provide. You want to. I believe every parent, it's the same. You don't just want to provide the bare minimum. You want to make sure that they got a really good footing. Um, so it's the same, and that worry will always stay with every parent, regardless. Even without the pandemic, that's a worry. Like it's one of those things. So I think it's something you just got to crunch as you go along. Um, sure, maybe the pandemic has made it a little bit harder, but by and large, it's one of those challenges that you got to live with or without the pandemic.
Mm.
So these are the thoughts that you have in your mind, but they are also they kind of motivate you to maybe burn the midnight oil or go the extra mile, kind of a thing. So it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you
Well,
want to do the best for your kids as well.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, you seem like such a hands-on father right now if I see you
Oh
on social
yeah.
media. Has being a dad changed you in any way or changed the way you see life?
Oh yeah, a lot. Like before this, I would be all about work, like ambition and make the cash and all that kind of thing. Typical goals. But now it's different. Like for example, closing a business for family is a tough call, and I believe it's not something I would have done if not for family. So I think that was kind of like a major shift personally as well, because I had to let one baby slash one goal die to allow this baby, aka this goal, to flourish. So that came from my mentality, or that came from a mindset as both a husband as well as a father. I mean, it doesn't make sense if you're not a parent, if you've not got a kid, or at least if you're not in my shoes, I don't think it would have made sense. Like, what? You close a business for family? Really? There are so many other ways around it. but I think this kind of highlights, how my mindset has changed being a dad. So tough calls, and there'll be many tough calls ahead, I'm sure.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
can
So
totally relate. Yeah.
yeah,
Will
I
there
mean,
ever be a
being
time though where if your kid grows up to be a tough teenager to deal with, and then you're gonna guilt trip and say, "I shut down a business for you," you know?
well,
Now you put it in his head, he'll use it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah. That thought never really crossed my mind, but yeah. Well, I'll hang on to it. Let's see what happens. No,
Now,
but you know
Liang,
what?
yeah. Anything
Yeah.
else you want to add?
Well, like going back to that, like when he grows up, me and my kid, we have plans. Like we wanna. You've seen the movie Chef?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So John Favreau, and he's got his food truck thing going on.
yeah, yeah.
Like yeah, that's me and my boy. Like when he turns 15 and he can work for his own cash, he starts saving up for his uni funds. That's what we're gonna start. We're gonna have a food truck,
A taco
and I
food
think
truck.
yeah, it inculcates some good habits in him. Uh, Good father and son bonding time. So yeah, that's 15 years down the road. So 15 years down the road, we'll have an interview and we'll see what happens.
All planned out, huh, Liang?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
All right. Well, finally, I guess we want to know what your advice is to someone who might be struggling mentally right now in these difficult times. And how do you find your path to happiness in life?
Wow. This is something people pay good money for. Like you sign up for a seminar or something. But okay, in my humble 1.5 sen worth, uh, I would I would not be in the right position. I'd be kidding you if I could tell you, okay, this is the magic elixir to happiness. I would also not be in a position to tell you like, okay, this is your path to happiness. Because everyone's different. Like, Bel, you've got your own thing going on. You define happiness one way. JD, I don't know, you want to keep playing tennis and that's your path to happiness. So everyone's different. But what I would say is your happiness is worth fighting for. Like you could be suffering from a massive degree of cabin fever. You're stuck at home, and with this MCO that kicks in tomorrow, or that kicks in soon, and you're stuck at home, and you're feeling helpless, and you're feeling like a massive lack of purpose. You don't know what to do. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you've got a massive pay cut. Um, don't see your friends for drinks anymore, and you're isolated and you're abandoned. You're feeling alone. I think the way I look at it is this: you're living in a very historical moment, like you're living in a pandemic. I feel there's so much, so much in saying I lived through a pandemic and survived. I'm not talking about living through a pandemic and saying you thrived. I mean, that's for the elite few. I'm sure there are people who are thriving right now, but to be able to live through a pandemic and you survived, you're a survivor. That's hats off to you. You made it. You're not talking about profits. You're not talking about multiplying, or you're not talking about expansion. You just want to make it through so that you can carry on with the rest of your life the way you're supposed to. So stay positive, smile, and happy 2021, everybody.